There is something new on the menus of establishments such as A&W and Kelsey's, and also now Tim Hortons. Beyond Meat burgers and breakfast sandwiches are making their way into the hands and mouths of consumers. The company is part of a stratospheric rise of plant-based meat alternatives. What does this meatless meat say about our changing relationship with the food on our plate? Let's ask. In Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Lisa Clark. She's a political scientist and researcher studying food policy and agriculture at the University of Saskatchewan. And with us in studio, Dana McCauley, Associate Director of New Venture Creation at the University of Guelph, Rosie Schwartz, Consulting Dietitian, and Adam Grogan, Senior Vice President of Marketing, Innovation, and Product Development with Maple Leaf Foods. And we are delighted to welcome the three of you here to our studio. And Lisa Clark, glad to have you on the line from Western Canada. Let me just start by reading this to get our discussion going here. According to Allied Market Research, in 2017, meat substitutes accounted for over $4 billion in sales globally. They expect that number to nearly double to almost $8 billion by the year 2025. Lisa, to you first. Why has there been so much growth in this area?
Well, I think there's been growth happening over the last 5-10 years or so, and we're just seeing this sort of, fruition of the market happening right now. And I think it has a lot to do with just more information about the linkages between health and diet, and more evidence-based research regarding animal-based proteins and their effects on human health. Also, the linkages between industrial meat production and climate change. And I just think more consumers are becoming aware of these connections and rethinking some of their dietary choices.
Adam, why did your company decide to get into this field?
Well, we've intended to spend about $600 million into this space. We've bought two of the largest plant-based protein companies in the United States, as well as we're going to be investing in a large facility. We see tremendous growth. We're seeing consumers looking for a variety of protein, whether that's meat-based or plant-based protein, for a variety of reasons that was called out earlier. And we're just excited to be in it, and we're playing to win.
Playing to win. That sounds like a thing corporations say. We're playing to win.
Well, we have had two brands, probably the two largest brands in the United States, Field Roast and Light Life. And we're well beyond a burger. I mean, you're seeing a lot. That's what you're seeing in the food service space. We produce tempeh, burgers, sausages, a variety of products, cheese even. And we're seeing tremendous growth in that space with consumers.
Dana, let me figure out, or see if we can figure out what's new about this, because veggie burgers have been around for years.
You're
so how's
right.
this different?
What's different is that these companies that are succeeding right now have been coming at it from through the lens of biomimicry. So instead of trying to make something that is just vaguely similar to a meat burger, they really are trying to duplicate it. So in 2009, the Beyond Meat folks said, this is our moonshot, this is what we're going for. And they applied, science and a lot of technological insight into figuring out how to duplicate that matrix of fibers that make meat meaty, how to duplicate the juiciness. In fact, they've ended up taking the heme that's naturally in soybeans and using yeast to ferment that, and that's what gives you that juiciness and that pink color. So this is not just cooking, this is food science, and that's the difference. We have a researcher at the University of Guelph who is working at trying to duplicate the fibers in a steak. And so that's, obviously going to be a huge endeavor, and we're investing a ton into that lab. And that's where we're going with this biomimicry.
Rosie, the vegetarians were always interested in this kind of thing, but this clearly has moved beyond vegetarians. How come?
Well, I think that people are looking at some of what Lisa has said in terms of health, in terms of the environment, but I'm not so sure that they're always getting a healthy choice.
Tell me what you mean.
Well, some of these plant-based burgers or alternatives, some of them may be healthier. It depends on what the ingredients are. But some are what's called ultra-processed. They contain all kinds of ingredients that we normally wouldn't find in food, some of them are loaded with sodium, they're loaded with saturated fat. And so if people are choosing them, if they're meat eaters and they're choosing some of these plant-based burgers for health, they have an undeserved health halo. And so you need to look at each product individually.
Lisa, what's your view on that so-called undeserved health halo? Do you agree?
Well, the research that I've conducted with a few colleagues at the University of Saskatchewan has shown that a lot of Canadians are concerned about the processing involved with some of these meat analogs and these more kind of these veggie burgers and these meat substitutes. Most Canadians, what we found, consume lower processed plant-based proteins such as beans or tofu, but are still wary of the ultra-processed type veggie chicken strips, this kind of thing, and veggie burgers. So there's definitely some apprehension on behalf of Canadian consumers regarding sodium levels and what other preservatives are included in more processed types of plant-based proteins.
Now, having said that, Rosie, everything's relative. Would you say that this meatless meat is healthier than regular meat?
Depends on the product.
Depends again, eh?
And so if you look at some of the offerings, the new breakfast sandwiches, for example, the ones that are meatless are higher in sodium than the ones that contain meat. So we need to look at what are we choosing instead. If you're getting even a regular meat burger at a fast food restaurant, chances are it's going to be lower in sodium and contain similar amounts of fat as the plant-based burger. So
May not be further ahead.
So in fact, and the research is looking at ultra-processed foods, and it's showing that we should not be eating them as regularly as people think it's all right to do.
Sorry, Adam, are we right to be concerned about the health impacts of meatless meat?
I think everything is about balance and choice. I mean, in our particular perspective, we do produce burgers, but at the same time, we also have tempeh, which is fermented soy. So I think it's really about providing variety, and we have a responsibility as an organization and brands to make sure that we're transparent about what's in the food, and I think that's the position that we take.
Are you?
Are we
Transparent about what's in the food?
100%. You will find information both on the label, which we view as really critical to make sure that that's legible, it's understandable, and then also on our website, we make sure that we provide all of that information. So I think it's our responsibility and it's our duty to our consumers to make sure that they understand what they're putting in their bodies.
Lisa, do you think the public is clear on what's in its head, the public's head, when it hears plant-based meat?
Well, I think the publicly acknowledged definitions of what plant-based meat is evolving. The cross-Canada survey that we conducted, we toiled over what to call this group of foods, and we came up with protein alternatives because this is a Health Canada term that includes lower processed plant-based proteins such as beans, but also things like meat analogs, veggie burgers, that sort of thing. Because in a beta test, we found that not everybody knows what a plant-based food or plant-based meats are. So I think as more attention and more media attention goes towards Beyond Burger and the proliferation of plant-based meats, people will get a better idea of what they are. But there is some confusion at this point.
Yeah,
sure.
let me get Dana on that too. Do we really
One of my
get
favorite topics.
Yeah, do we really get when we say we're having a plant-based hamburger? Do we really get what that means?
This is the thing. So I have this debate quite often because there are people who are in the meat industry and who are very rational, logical folks, and they're like, this isn't meat, so we shouldn't call it meat. And they're like, soy beverage is soy beverage, not soy milk. But then as a marketer at heart, I come back to this and I say, well, but what does the consumer think they're buying? What are they hiring to do the job? Like, I need something to drink. Therefore, this looks like milk, and it substitutes for milk for me. I call it milk. So there's this tension
When it's
between
really not milk.
It's not. It didn't come out of a mammary gland. It is not technically milk, but I'm hiring it to do the same job as milk in my home, you know, and on my table. And the same thing, you know, when you go to A&W and you're going to a burger place. And so somehow we have to balance out the need for transparency and the need to, you know, make sure that people understand what they're eating and that marketing is clear, but also understand that consumers are already overwhelmed with so many messages, and we have to speak their language if we're going to, you know, demystify what's in the grocery store.
Okay, Adam, let me do a few questions with you right now because, again, on this issue, should we be calling these things plant-based protein as opposed to veggie burger or whatever else?
You know, consumers know the big difference between a meat burger and a plant-based burger. I think what's really great about this whole situation is that these you know, alternative products are available across this country. Only a few years ago, it was very difficult to find a great tasting vegetarian burger, a vegan burger, or a plant-based burger, whatever you want to call it. I think what's really important is that the choice is available. And so, you know, I don't need to weigh too much into that topic. I think consumers can clearly tell us that they understand the difference.
You're with Maple Leaf Foods. Is that a meat company?
We're a protein company. We are a very significant investor in plant protein. We own the two largest refrigerated brands in the United States, both Light Life and Field Roast. So we view ourselves as a protein company. At our heart, we are a meat company. We have our history and our heritage in the meat business. But you know, as consumers go, we're going to go. We're going to be right there with them, and they're looking at things in more of a consuming of protein, and that's what we intend to do.
Because I always thought you were a meat company, but I see on your website you call yourselves a sustainable protein company right now.
Yes,
So-
yeah, because we have you know, we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the plant area, and so for us, we're agnostic. We have to. As a branded food company, what's important for us is to make sure we give consumers the choice. And what consumers are telling us now is they want variety. They want to have a veggie burger, you know, one day and a meat burger the next day. And so we intend to provide it to them.
Now, okay, tell me this. When one goes into a supermarket and one goes to the refrigerated area where you would expect to buy real hamburger meat.
Right.
Do you want to see the plant-based stuff in that same refrigerated area?
Absolutely. And actually, it's happening already, Stephen. If you walk into any grocery store across this country right now, I was in Vancouver earlier this week, even here in Toronto, you can find right beside a beef burger, a plant-based burger, and it's clearly labeled, clearly laid out, and consumers are choosing them at a quite rapid rate.
Well, you won't be surprised to hear that some people think that, sorry about this terrible pun, that's not kosher. Quebec Cattle Producers Federation has filed a complaint with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency saying that plant-based proteins shouldn't identify themselves as meat, and I think they're probably not nutty bananas about the idea of you putting it right side by side with real meat products. What's your response to that?
Well, I think, you know, the consumer is going to tell us what they want. And I think it's important for us as an industry to make sure that we, you know, that's the business we're in, is to make sure that we're providing consumers what they want. So, you know, our view is that if they tell us they want to have it right beside the meat burgers, we're going to put it in there right beside the meat burgers. We're seeing it actually in milk alternatives. Dana was talking about, I purchase, you know, regular cow's milk, and there's almond milk right beside it. And I think that that's an important choice as a consumer that I want to be able to make.
Lisa, is this an issue?
I think from our study results, I feel that most Canadians want choice, and I think that's a really important aspect of this discussion. We found that 26% of Canadians we surveyed consider themselves meat reducers, meaning they intend to use animal proteins instead of meat proteins in their daily diets. And of those who said they were intending on reducing their meat consumption, 55% said they were willing to try new protein alternatives or plant-based foods in the future as they roll out into the market. So I think the consumer demand for choice is there, and I think we need to provide consumers with as many options as possible in this department.
Dana, what's your view on whether or not consumers are deeply concerned about whether or not real meat is beside the plant-based meat, is beside the veggie burgers, etc.?
I think consumers want convenience. Anytime I've ever done consumer research on any food product I was involved with, convenience was always in that top 3 after, taste and family acceptance. Value and convenience would sort of juggle for the third and fourth spot. So if it makes it easier for you to zip in and out of the grocery store at 4 o'clock and go home and actually cook dinner and sit down with your family, then I think consumers are on board.
And that is the mission at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about eating and enjoying and connecting over food. And, there's the business types have, of course, their territory to defend, and that's their jobs. But ultimately, I love that, I hear Lisa and Adam talking about what do the consumers want.
Rosie, how important do you think it is to have very clear definitions about what's meat, what's a veggie burger, what's a plant-based burger, whatever?
I think it's important, but I think we have to go even further. So there's a difference, for example, between what Adam is talking about, a tempeh or a fermented soy burger, and one that is made out of soy protein isolate. We're looking at, and nutritionally, we should be looking for more whole foods. And when we look at, let's say, plant-based burgers and we lump them all together, I think we might be making a mistake there in terms of nutrition. We should be looking at real food. And when you get all these isolates and all these different combinations, I think it's important for consumers to know when they're looking at a plant-based burger, look for those with whole, real food ingredients.
I get convenience, Adam, and I get your understanding that you want to be receptive to the needs of your consumers. But where is sort of, I'm putting words in your mouth a little bit here, Rosie, but where does truth in advertising come in all of this?
Well, I think consumers are demanding 100% transparency. I mean, at Maple Leaf, and even you see it right now, and even in what we show in our advertising, I think consumers, they don't want to be duped. I agree. And so for us, and even in our product design, in the Light Life Burger, in our case, I mean, we have probably the lowest or the smallest ingredient panel of any of these products that we've been talking about today. So, we have a fundamental belief that, look, it's amazing what's happening right now. Flexitarianism, reducitarianism, whatever you want to term it, is on the rise. And I think it's great for all of us as consumers. We're blessed to be in this country. I get to have grilled vegetables, I get to have a veggie dog, or I can have a real top dog, whatever it is that you want to have. I mean, I think it's amazing that it's available in this country right now. And that's what we're excited about.
But you got to know what you're eating.
100%.
Yeah.
And as suppliers, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are transparent, that we have 100% information that's available to the consumer, and we explain not only the ingredient but why it's there and where it's from. And then that's in our belief fundamentally what the consumer deserves.
Okay, Lisa, let me bring you in on. I want to explore another area in this conversation, and that is the effect on the environment. And we know that obviously in terms of climate change, in terms of the intensity in the relationship between raising beef and having steak, etc., it's intense. And I wonder if you have any sort of empirically provable knowledge on whether or not some people are making the switch to these alternative products because they think it's less harmful to the climate, less harmful on the environment.
Well, when we were looking at our results from our cross-Canada survey, we were actually quite surprised to see that the #1 reason why those that say they want to switch to more protein alternatives, plant-based protein alternatives, the #1 concern was about the environmental impact of animal products. And we were actually, actually was a higher ranking than health. So consumers are becoming more aware, and I think, just to touch on the discussion that was happening before, yes, we need clarity and transparency, but consumers are very savvy, and they will find information and they will seek out information about various foods and topics if they choose to do so. So consumers are very aware of marketing and labeling and the impact of various foods on the environment or on their health. And I think we need to give consumers credit for the information that they find themselves and the information that's available. But hormones in meat was another high-ranking issue that consumers were worried about. So again, this is coming back to health, but also related to the environment.
Dana, let me follow up with you on that. How much more environmentally friendly is it to go with plant-based as opposed to, honest to goodness, beef?
Well, I don't have the numbers top of mind, but across the scale from water use to energy use and land use, there's significant benefit in going with something plant-based. Also, when you think about the fact that by 2050, WHO is saying that we're going to have 9 billion people on the planet, and that the demand for animal products, if we don't start eating more plant-based foods, will go up by about 70%. Well, gee, how can we even have that kind of animal agriculture intensity? Can we even make that happen if we don't want to start eating more plant-based food? So in some ways, we don't have a choice. We really need to take this road.
It behooves us to find an alternative.
It behooves us.
It behooves
Yes,
us.
well
Okay.
played.
Can you weigh in on this issue about how much more environmentally friendly the plant-based area is as opposed to the real deal?
Yeah, I mean, Dana's got it right. I mean, the fact of the matter is that as an industry, we have to look ourselves in the mirror. Raising cattle between water use and land use, and what we do with waste is a big environmental concern. And we've been on the public record to say that actually we want to do something about it. And we've got some very specific targets to make reductions in that area. So I think Lisa made a great point. I think consumers are very aware of that. They are making the choices they're making for a number of reasons. I think the largest one is around variety and their interest in trying new things, but there's health and there's environmental concern. And so on all those measures, it behooves us to make sure that we're doing something about it.
Gotcha. Lisa, let me go to you first on this, and I don't want to get too touchy-feely here, but is this symbolic of a structural shift in the way that we value meat?
I think this is the beginning of major change. The proliferation of plant-based foods and meats has been happening in Europe for over 10 years and has taken up a significant part of the market, the protein market in Europe, across Europe. So I think it's just a matter of time before North America catches up to that level of market infiltration. I do see this as a shift, partially because of consumer awareness regarding climate change and industrialized meat production, but also the linkages between meat consumption and health. And I don't think evidence-based research regarding those two issues is going anywhere. I think, if anything, it's just becoming more and more widely available to the average Canadian consumer.
Well, this is a key thing. I mean, Dana, is this a tectonic shift in the way people look at things, or is this a fad and it may fade out?
There will be people who try these products and then just go back to their old habits. But that said, even if you just look at the per ounce price or the per gram price of most animal proteins, it's gone up every year. And if that trend continues, which it probably will, because of course, all the inputs are getting more expensive, it's going to be that as the market penetration increases for the plant-based products, that their prices are potentially going to come down, especially here in Canada, where we already have a great pulse industry that we export most of. So if we start keeping it and processing it, we should be able to become more efficient. So we might get to the point where meat is a celebration food. It's my birthday, I'm going to have real meat, and the same way we treat something like, say, champagne now. That we splurge on a roast for Christmas or a holiday.
Special occasion.
Yeah, exactly. 100 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
Okay, you're the dietitian here, so let me ask you this. What is something people should keep in mind if they are thinking about cutting down on their meat consumption?
That they replace the meat with more whole foods. So as Dana said, the pulse industry, the pulse farmers, we grow lentils, we grow all these fabulous ingredients, and I think if, as Canadians, we look to how we should be preparing these foods and doing it quickly. Some of these foods are just as fast as a veggie burger, and I think if we're looking for more of these foods, and then maybe the occasional burger, the plant-based burger, then I think that nutritionally that would be great. But I think in that shift towards a more plant-based diet, we need to look at what we're replacing meat with. And right now, I'm not sure that consumers are getting that. They think that if they're not eating meat, that going for a plant-based burger is the next best thing. And as a dietitian, I would like to see lentils on the table, chickpeas, kidney beans, and in ways that can be really delicious, and it doesn't have to taste like meat.
All right, that's you've hit on where I wanted to follow up. You always give us the straight goods, right? You would never fudge with us, right?
Right,
Are
right.
you trying to tell me that a pulse tastes as good as a hamburger?
It depends on who you are, but the thing is, would you be eating a hamburger every day? You wouldn't be doing that. And so, I mean, when we look at traditional diets that have been known to be healthy, the Mediterranean diet is not based on having a huge hunk of meat on your plate. The Mediterranean diet is where the meat is the garnish if it's being used. But there are beans and lentils and whole grains and lots of fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. So we've seen all the research on the Mediterranean diet, and that is more of a plant-based eating plan.
Lisa, tell me this. Can you imagine a day where humans are essentially meat-free?
Wow, that's a tough question. I would say, as of now, no. Not anytime in the near future. I think possibly more people will move to a more flexitarian type dietary lifestyle with using meat for the occasional celebratory meals or occasional meat consumption, but I don't see all meat consumption going away in the near future.
Okay, Dana, how about you on that? Do you imagine a day when we're meat-free?
Probably not in the foreseeable future, no. I really don't. I think meat and meat products have a place. I mean, when you just think about the role that, for instance, eggs play in baking and, structural food chemistry of a lot of the foods we like, it's going to be very, very difficult to totally get animal products out of the supply chain. But I do think that, that we're going to have more variety and that we're going to eat less meat. And I love, what Rosie said about the Mediterranean diet. I look to, like the Japanese, the Korean diet. Again, meat is there and it's very delicious and it's very carefully prepared, but it's a smaller portion to go with all the other things. And I think that's already happened. As a kid, my mom made everybody a full steak. Now we're a family of 3. We make one steak and cut it into, into enough for all of us.
Adam, let me give you the last word on this, and that is, again, if you're a sustainable protein company as opposed to a meat company, can you imagine Maple Leaf Foods, say in 25 or 50 years, kind of being out of the meat business and into alternatives only?
I don't foresee it per se. I mean, it's hard to predict the future. I think there is parts of the population that should be moderating their meat consumption. That's a fact. There's other parts of the world where they're getting enough meat. I mean, meat consumption, protein consumption across this globe right now is accelerating at a rapid pace. So I think I also subscribe to the notion that it's about balance and moderation. And I think it's important that consumers have the information to make decisions and choices. Whether it's lentils or a pea-based hamburger, that's I think at the end of the day that's a great choice to be able to make.
Okay, that's our time, everybody. Want to thank you for coming on to TVO tonight, starting with Lisa Clark at the University of Saskatchewan, Rosie Schwartz, the consulting dietitian, Dana McCauley from the University of Guelph, Adam Grogan, Maple Leaf Foods. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.